Bethesda has a new, bold business strategy of telling, not showing everyone how good, smart, capable game creators they are, while calling everyone who disagrees stupid and in general attacking the fans. I have a feeling that I have seen this somewhere before, multiple times in fact, and I have a feeling I pretty much know how this is gonna end.
Bethesda started responding to some of the Starfield and Shattered Space pushback. And there's really two parts of this. First, just an interview that was done with Games Radar that does touch on many of the controversial topics being discussed in the community. But then, as a result of how negative some of the community reactions were to that initial response, we actually got a response to the response and even further clarification. And honestly, I wasn't even going to make this video, but I saw a lot of bad takes out there on this one, so I wanted to weigh in myself, because I think some of what Bethesda is saying here reflects a complete disconnect with their fans, while some of the other aspects of this commentary is just being blown out of proportion. But what kicked
I'm pretty sure Bethesda has not just a small disconnect with fans, but a giant disconnect with the reality in general.
this all off is just recently Emil, the design director at Bethesda,
Emil, the guy who made Starfield story and went on an unhinged Twitter rant about how he is a genius writer and the people who do not appreciate Starfield story are idiots. That's a very bold move, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off.
did an interview with Games Radar Plus, where he talks about both Starfield and Shattered Space, and
The plus means if Games Radar is shit, then the Games Radar Plus is really good.
one of the main quotes getting fans up in arms is this: I think in a lot of ways, Starfield is the hardest thing Bethesda has ever done. We pushed ourselves to make something totally different, to just jam into an Xbox the biggest, richest space simulation RPG anyone could imagine. That we pulled it off
Biggest, richest space simulation RPG. I'm sorry, where is the simulation aspect of Starfield? This is the first time I even say that this is a space simulator. I have never heard this insane take before.
makes Starfield something of a technical marvel. It's also, in a lot of ways, the best game we've ever made. But for us,
Oh boy, you see why these people are insane? This makes Starfield a technical marvel. Okay, yeah, that's true for Bethesda inside of Bethesda. But you see, gamers, people who use your product, people who play your games, don't care. We fundamentally don't care about was the coding hard or easy. Did you use AI or didn't you use AI as long as it is good? We don't care about any of your hardships, your troubles, or how many groundbreaking, no one cares things you needed to do to make the game, as long as it's good. And if it's bad, then none of it matters. We're consumers, not programmers. I'm not gonna call Starfield a 10 out of 10 just because a developer said, oh, it was hard to make. I had to work and get paid money to make this. Oh, woe is me. We spent 9 years or 10 years or however long Starfield took to make this. Yeah, that's not an excuse. I can spend 2 hours on the toilet and creating a shit, but that doesn't mean it's the most amazing thing in the universe. It just means it took a long time and it wasn't all that useful.
most importantly, Starfield has its own unique personality and now sits right next to Fallout and Elder Scrolls. And well, honestly, yeah, I have a lot to say about even what was just said there. Emil does continue on, saying, Starfield is developing its own unique fan base. It's big and it's growing. Bethesda used to feel like the studio
True, Starfield's fanbase is unique in the worst ways humanly imaginable.
of Elder Scrolls, that it was the studio you'd associate with Elder Scrolls and Fallout. Now it's Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and Starfield. Bethesda Game Studios' big three. As you can probably imagine, a lot of people had issues with what was said during this. There was lots
Yeah, might as well just put in Redfall in this masterpiece list, and you're off to the races.
To push back online, I'm sure many of you watching right now feel the same way. And even just on the comment of Starfield now being a part of the big three with the Elder Scrolls and Fallout, Games Radar, the outlet that literally conducted this interview, waited about a week, then posted an opinion piece that disagreed with what Emil said during his interview with Games Radar. So yeah, there's obviously some people disagreeing with this, and I'm definitely one of them. On the side of Starfield being an incredibly difficult game for...
By the way, we have seen this clip before, but again, this is Fallout 4. You just look at these couple of seconds of gameplay, and you can just already tell that this is so much more enjoyable and fun than Starfield. How? I can't even explain, but it just is. It is clearly visible that this gameplay is so much more fun than Starfield, even though Starfield is technically supposed to be a carbon copy.
For Bethesda, I honestly get that. With Fallout and the Elder Scrolls, you almost have a rough blueprint that you're able to follow during development. Immediately, you can fill in a ton of blanks with information thanks to some of the past games, as well as the established lore for that franchise. But when it comes to making Starfield, you have none of that. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that fans were hotly debating what features we can expect from Starfield. I personally didn't expect the big space game to have any kind of spaceflight, because it's Bethesda. They don't typically do that kind of stuff. So for Bethesda to turn around and say that yes.
Yeah, but okay, they did spaceflight, but who cares? It's bad. No one cares if you're doing something new if you're completely horrible at it. You don't get an award for that, you don't get recommendations for that. And this is seemingly what Bethesda and a lot of game companies and a lot of companies in general don't understand. You doing something new doesn't mean that all of us need to just spaz out and splurge out for you.
Developing this one was hard and that it is a technical marvel makes perfect sense to me. I have no issues with that. And I mean, even in just objective terms, this game was worked on for about 8 years. That's a lot of time to spend on a video.
Doesn't make it a marvel, doesn't make it good, doesn't make it anything. It just makes it a lost cause.
Game for Bethesda Game Studios. So I do cut Emil some slack here, because I think what he's trying to say is that Starfield in a lot of ways is the best game Bethesda has ever made, particularly from a technical standpoint. They've done things with this game that they have never done or even really attempted.
Okay, but again, why would we the players care? Why? Why?
Did with some of their other games. And well, yeah, I can cut Emil some slack and I understand what he was going for. It's still a quote that makes you shake your head. Like, you have to know that saying Starfield is the best game we've ever made is going to get some pushback. Because yeah, the game's been incredibly controversial for the past year. Fans very obviously don't agree that this is the best you can do. And then continuing further to say it's right up there as a part of the big three, while many fans are literally begging for you to move on from this one, will also, of course, lead to more controversy. Many fans are actively concerned about what's going to happen with The Elder Scrolls 6 as a byproduct of some of the major decisions Bethesda's making with Starfield. So then quotes like this are definitely concerning.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people have lost all hope in Elder Scrolls 6 being good. Because Bethesda saw that AI generation, people don't want it. They made handcrafted locations, and guess what? Those handcrafted locations are arguably as bad, if not honestly worse than the AI generated ones. No one wants an Elder Scrolls of this quality. It's just not gonna be good. People see that. We're not dumb.
Because they don't want you to continue in this direction, they want you to go into a different direction. And yeah, this is obviously a debated point. Some people like Starfield a lot more than some others, and that's fine. But I think just even overall, it's easy to see when fan feedback is looking like this, that saying this is the best game ever is never really going to be a great look with the majority of your fan base. And the next quote only makes things a little bit worse. Any Bethesda developer who has been around since the Horse Armor days knows that by this point, if we understand one thing, it's DLC. That's not to say we're on autopilot and don't think about it now. It means we still think about it and have probably thought about it more than any other studio since those early.
I don't even know honestly what they mean with the word DLC at this point. Because Shattered Space fixed not a single issue that people had with Starfield, which means that the developers themselves think that Starfield is perfect. And a DLC, which no one agrees with, is just gonna make it better somehow. I can't even comprehend the thoughts behind making a sentence like this even. It's crazy.
Days. And I think the result of all of that contemplating is that we have a pretty good handle on how to plug new content into our huge games. And like for me personally, I take issue with some of these quotes on several different levels. Emil cites the horse armor days as if they were some distant memory, saying that if you've been around since those, you'll see we have this DLC thing figured out by now. But the reality is, Bethesda is still doing horse armor, and if anything, it seems like a core aspect of Bethesda's strategy going forward is to make more horse armor. If you're not familiar, the origins of this horse armor meme was a $2.50 DLC for Oblivion that simply added in horse armor. At the time, fans were angry.
And now Blizzard is selling $70 horse armor. That's kind of crazy if you think about it.
At the cost to content ratio, many considering a DLC that only adds in horse armor for $2.50 to be a major ripoff, and even just in the content side. This is not the type of content we want from a individual DLC. And like, yeah, there was obviously a point in the middle there where Bethesda probably took the lessons from that, but recently they've been bought up by Microsoft and are fully in on this type of content. The Bethesda of 2024 is selling a $70 game that you can buy early access to, but once you're actually in-game, buy plushie sets for $3, or hey, maybe a singular outfit for $4, but if you want a full-on spacesuit, you'll have to whip out your wallet with the $5 premium, but if you're looking for something a bit cheaper, there's some weapon skins for a mere $3 as well, or hey, how about
oh boy,
an entirely new quest to add it into the game? Don't worry, that'll just be $5. I think most fans out there feel that a lot of
and the quest is stupid. This DLC is literally for the Bethesda fans that have autism, but they are desperate to prove to the world that they're not deficient.
this stuff is worse than that $2 horse armor. It doesn't really seem like Bethesda has evolved much from the horse armor days, particularly when it comes to some of these DLCs. So yeah, this quote from Emil here just seems completely tone deaf to me. This is one of the
By the way, also the fact that these in these small, literal 20 to 30 minute long DLCs that Bethesda is putting out, they can't even be bothered to put actual real choices and consequences in them. It's like one character that doesn't impact anything outside of the DLC, and they still cannot be asked to put in interesting choices. Everything is as linear and one-dimensional as it can be.
big controversy surrounding your games right now. These paid mods being ridiculously priced for the amount of content they're delivering, so then to specifically call back to one of the times you sold something and fans didn't agree, to show how much you know about DLC, does feel very disconnected. And just overall, saying that if there's one thing Bethesda understands, it's DLC, in response to a DLC release that was met with poor critical reviews and overwhelmingly negative fan reviews, when it comes to both the content as well as the price of that DLC, just feels bad. Like, in fairness to Emil,
Yeah, you know you messed up when Juice is saying that you messed up.
we don't know exactly when this interview took place, so we could have been talking about these things prior to seeing some of the Shattered Space feedback, and in that sense, I cut him some slack. But the interview was posted after Shattered Space released, and even in other responses, we're hearing a similar story. If folks haven't played Shattered Space and they like Starfield, I think they're missing out. If folks have played Shattered Space and still don't like it, that makes me sad, honestly. Just know that we've also been hearing from plenty of people who love it. We'll talk more about this tweet later. It's a part of Emil's response to some of the responses from this interview on Games Radar, but taking those two responses together, it feels like Bethesda is ignoring the criticism, or at least Emil is. In this interview and other interviews, we hear how Shattered Space was made in response to fan feedback. Well, it seems like the sad reality is it didn't work. Both fans and critics alike are still not really connecting with this content. And if anything, it seems like Shattered Space has only worsened some of the fan criticism of Starfield overall. So then to hit back with, well, some people actually love it. It's like, okay, if you love Shattered Space, that's great. Having fun with a video game shouldn't be something we have to defend, and sadly, yes, many people do have to deal with that when it comes to Starfield, but at the same time, Shattered Space isn't connecting with the masses from all of the available data I can see. And Bethesda's response here feels a lot more like putting on the blinders and saying that they make great DLCs.
There were people who actually thought that this is gonna be good, fun, and save Starfield. That is sad. that is real sad.
or that people are loving their DLCs. Meanwhile, a lot of people seemingly don't love this DLC. And really, I don't see any major acknowledgement of that here, no recognition of some of this fan pushback around the type of content being released. And reading into some of these quotes, it really does feel like this attitude is enraging some parts of the fandom. Because for a lot of people, after reading these quotes and being so upset about what happened with Shattered Space, they just feel like Bethesda is saying, we know better than you, and they aren't hearing the criticisms or the feedback. And in some ways, the rest of the interview only serves to reinforce that. We broke from our established formula of give the player a giant landmass and let them wander around and explore tons of specific handcrafted content. In Starfield, you have giant landmasses and tons of handcrafted content, but not together. And that's something a lot of folks missed. So admittedly, I'm a bit unsure on this one. I can't tell if
Who missed this? This was the primary complaint. A lot of useless landmass filled with literal nothingness, and 5 handcrafted locations that the average person is not going to find in even 100 hours of gameplay. No one missed this. This was one of the primary complaints about the game.
Emil is saying missed as in they didn't realize the handcrafted content was there, or instead means missed in the sense that Shattered Space will be bringing giant landmasses and
I honestly think Emil is just someone insane who got out of the loony bin and got hired by Bethesda on a dice roll.
handcrafted content in one spot, and players have missed having that type of content, which, yeah, I would agree with that part. If it means missed in that the players didn't see it, I don't think people missed it, I just don't think they liked the style of content from Starfield that much. Starfield has an ungodly amount of content. It feels like a giant game, but at around 60 to 70 hours, I think many players hit this wall where the consistent fast
I think most people hit the wall roughly 3 hours. It was really fast to figure out that, hey, almost every location is just a copy-paste of the old location that you were in.
traveling and the lack of traditional
And Starfield was the first second Bethesda game, I'm sorry. Second. Fallout 76 also did the trick. It was the second Bethesda game that I got a level and I was not excited. And another game that does this is Diablo 4. Where you get a level and you're not excited because putting in the point and the skills and the whatnots is really redundant, boring, and you don't feel any changes. You know, when you're playing Fallout 3, New Vegas, or Fallout 4, you're excited to get that level. You see that bar being at 50%, and you're like, woohoo, gonna get a new perk next to, oh, it's gonna be amazing. But not here, not here. Playing Starfield, playing Diablo, playing Fallout 76 is, oh, I leveled up. You open the tab and you're like, oh, I actually leveled 5 times already. I just didn't notice because none of this crap matters.
Bethesda Game Studios exploration becomes annoying. I felt it, lots of reviews talk about it, and while yeah, it may just be my own stupid opinion, I still wasn't confused about the fact that there was more content out there. I saw the unfinished quests in my journal, and in reality, I just didn't want to play them anymore. Shattered Space is a response to those players, so Bethesda was gracious enough to keep it nice and simple for us and put all of that content in one place. While it doesn't change Starfield as a whole, it does offer this really unique place that players can go in order to get that experience. This is all post-release stuff aimed at giving fans more of what they deserve. But I think we are seeing the fact that Bethesda isn't exactly understanding why players are unhappy with Starfield. Because even in their attempted response, or giving players what content they deserve, the players still weren't super happy with what they got. And some of these other quotes definitely back up the idea that there is a disconnect here. Emil goes on to speak about Fallout 3's definitive ending before DLC. Because without Broken Steel, Fallout 3 will just be over once you beat the game. The Broken Steel DLC is what allowed you to keep playing after the end. And Emil takes this as a lesson that connects to Bethesda's evolving design philosophy. And that was really the moment we realized that our fans don't want to play our games. They want to live in the world.
Jump on the rock. Everyone knows scorpions can't climb on rocks.
Worlds we create. That means their experiences never end, and the content, whatever it is, works together as seamlessly as we can make it. And they definitely are onto something with that. We keep hearing about these 10-year plans for Bethesda games, and clearly Starfield was made with that in mind. This game has an absurd amount of content, likely the biggest Bethesda Game Studios game ever, and many systems that you can spend hours in, and modders can spend thousands of hours improving. But I think Emil is partially missing it here. It's about living in in a lived-in world, one that truly feels alive. I think Emil and the broader team at Bethesda Game Studios are pumping out content for these games.
Juicehead has watched my videos. He understands now the point that in Starfield, one of the biggest problems is that not a single location feels even remotely real. All of them feel fake. All of them feel like they just spawned in 5 seconds ago. All of it is as unbelievable as possible.
They want Fallout 76 to exist forever, and a big talking point before Starfield's release was how they needed to prepare for people playing these games for 10 years now. To Bethesda, that largely just seems to mean more content. Get in as many quests as possible, and we saw that with the insane amount of content in Starfield, it'll really take a good 30 hours to get into this game and open up all of the major mechanics as well as faction quest lines. It is a giant game, but even despite the fact that Starfield is objectively giant, I would bet for many players out there, they're going to have more hours played on Skyrim or Fallout 4 than Starfield. And I think the big reason for that is both Skyrim and Fallout 4 just feel so much more alive. One of the issues with Starfield is the world does kind of feel like it only ever exists around you. This is likely a byproduct of the consistent fast traveling, as you literally are deloading the cells, but as I was playing through Shattered Space, it just consistently felt like I was the most important person in the room at all times. Everything was about
You've really watched my videos. Nice. Yeah, every character, this was since Starfield, not even the expansion. Every single character that you talk in this game is like, ah yes, you, person who I just have seen for the first second in my life. I am gonna treat you now like you're my long-lost brother, tell you everything like a child, and, you know, that sort of stuff. It is just not a single conversation in Starfield feels like you're talking to a person, which is incredibly strange considering people technically wrote this crap. Maybe Emil is a lizard person or something. Who honestly knows at this point?
me, and that extends to the rest of Starfield as well. Fallout 4 and Skyrim do a much better job at having the world continue to live without you. The people, places, and overall world just genuinely feel alive. People are scared of walking around certain areas because Deathclaws are there. And yeah, you can literally go there and then get massacred by Deathclaws if you want to. Starfield doesn't have a Quarry Junction, or even to a greater extreme, blowing up Megaton. And while of course, these aren't the only examples, it does feel like Starfield is missing that feeling. I don't enjoy Fallout 4 more than Starfield because there are more stories in Fallout 4. It's the depth of the stories being told by each of these respective games. The different paths, and more importantly, how alive some of the characters feel in Fallout 4 is what draws me in for a subsequent playthrough. In Fallout 4, a lot of the quests have you just as a character in someone else's story. Like during the Cabot House questline, you are introduced into this wacky, never-aging family, so pretty quickly it feels like you're thrust into something, and you have feelings about all of these major characters. They are the main characters of their story, and we're really just here along for the ride. I think in a lot of Starfield, those characters aren't shining nearly as bright for some reason. Like, thinking about this game.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Fallout 4 does have the problem of you go to a place and you're kind of just forced to deal with the consequences of others, and you don't really have impact in a lot of situations. Now, the main story is slightly different, obviously, but the side quests definitely feel that pain.
Outside of the companion.
Well, then you look at something that's actually good. Fallout New Vegas, obviously. New Vegas is the best Fallout. And I'm not gonna stop saying it, because why should I? It is literally the best. Shut up. Okay? Why would I stop claiming it's the best when it's the best and that everything should be made to that standard? Obviously, I should not, because that would lower the bar, which is how we got to this current point with Bethesda. Because few people allowed, some of you at least, allowed Bethesda to lower the bar. Oh no, they're gonna get it right next time. Oh no, they're gonna get it right next time. When 20 times pass, oh no, they're gonna get it right next time. Why are you hating a game? Just don't play it. Shut up. You're literally what's wrong with this industry. You're literally what's wrong with this world.
companions, there aren't any major characters that stood out to me. A lot of the people in Starfield just kind of blend together when I think about it. And I would ask you that same question. How many non-companion NPCs can you readily name from Starfield? Now think about the same thing for Fallout or the Elder Scrolls, and I imagine that number is going to be very different. So as you likely saw, all of this was said and the community had some pretty strong reactions to all of it. And I get this. Lots of these quotes were portrayed somewhat out of context, taking the most incendiary lines and having them posted somewhere where nobody is realistically reading what else was said around it. But even for me, I did find some of this stuff bothersome, and as somebody who was disappointed with Shattered Space, none of these responses made me feel like Bethesda would be doing better, or even just evolving anytime soon. And instead, I think a lot of Bethesda's responses here felt like they're insisting they know what's right and the players are wrong for not enjoying it. And I mean, that
Oh, did you just get that? Did you really understand that just now?
isn't baseless. This was literally the company responding to negative Steam reviews for Starfield less than 1 year ago. Just in principle, I think
The huge takeaway here, it was ChatGPT, right? The responses, which was hilarious, and those who weren't were copy pastes of, well, have you played the game correctly, dumbass? And I'm serious. Bethesda literally responded en masse. Well, have you tried to play the game like we want you to play it, not do things on your own, dipshit? Insane.
responding to negative reviews is kind of an odd thing in gaming. At the end of the day, if you like or dislike a game is quite subjective. So the fact that Bethesda was almost trying to what felt like correct those reviews was odd to a lot of people. And I think overall, many of these recent quotes to come out of this Emil interview did serve to fuel the fire and even just increase fan frustration with Bethesda overall. So one fan asked about all of that, taking to Twitter to literally just respond to Emil and explain their perspective as a fan, how they felt some of the interview responses were fairly tone deaf, with Bethesda patting themselves on the back while many reviews are quite negative for the DLC, with the overall message being that fans want to see Bethesda game studios and Starfield succeed, but these responses don't make it seem like they're learning from their mistakes.
Yeah, I wanted Starfield to succeed. I wanted to be wrong when Starfield was announced and we saw bits and pieces of gameplay, and I was looking at it and saying, wow, this is really slop. I wanted to be wrong. I wasn't, and that's not a good thing. Sure, we can laugh about it, but all in all, we missed out on a good game if it was made like a good game.
And Emil actually responded, which right off the bat is amazing to me. A dev simply responding to a fan who is taking out the time to lay out their frustrations is exactly
Emil probably got pissed and his ego is too large to allow something like that to slide. Don't lie.
what we need more of. And even if I don't agree with Emil's response fully, I really appreciate that he did respond, because it would be a lot easier to just ignore this. First, the interview. As the design director, sometimes I'm asked or instructed to do interviews. I was happy to do that.
Oh, we have seen this. No, I don't care about it. Anyway, that was Juicehead. When he says things are bad, and I mean, he's one of the biggest paid shills on the internet. You know it's bad. Anyway, bye.